both appealing for peace or were you praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry moon drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. And as usual, we have an interesting panel of opinionated people to join us and tell us what they think about some of the horrifying and some of the ludicrous items of religious news that occurred in the last 7 days. So we have Guy Otten from Manchester. Welcome, Guy.
Hiyo.
We have a new boy, Tom. Ed. Give us a clue, Tom.
Tom Enders.
Thank you, Tom, who is in the East Coast. And we had a lovely chat with him, Tercia and I, yesterday in the Free Thought Hour. I highly recommend you watch that. Then we have another regular. This is David Orenstein from New York area. And we have yet another regular in the form of Dread Pyrate Higgs from Canada. Welcome, you guys. Thank you very much for coming to talk about the news. This is how the religious news that doesn't normally make the mainstream shows has affected humanity over the last week. So we have a shocking incident that occurred in Uttar Pradesh, India, where a Muslim couple was brutally beaten to death with iron rods and sticks by their neighbors because their Muslim son had a romantic relationship with the Hindu neighbor's daughter. I'm going to show you a little clip about this. It's quite horrifying. Okay, it's up there, right?
In Uttar Pradesh, India, Indian Muslim couple beaten to death over son's romantic relationship. In a shocking incident in Uttar Pradesh, India, a Muslim couple was brutally beaten to death with iron rods and sticks by their neighbors due to their son Shaukat's romantic relationship with their neighbor's daughter, who is from the Hindu faith. According to Sitapur Superintendent of Police Chakresh Mishra, the violent altercation stemmed from the long-standing tension between the two families. In 2020, Shaukat eloped with the neighbor's daughter, who was then a minor, leading to his imprisonment for almost 3 years. He was arrested on August 16th, and although the young woman had since been married off to another man, she eloped once again to be with Shaukat, further enraging her family. Quote, the girl eloped from her husband's house and got married to Shaukat. Another FIR, which is a foreign police complaint, was filed against him in April 2023. However, the girl was an adult by then and told the court that she wanted to live with Shaukat, Mishra said. The deadly confrontation occurred when a 5-member gang, including the woman's father, confronted the couple at their home. Quote, the accused came to my house and started beating my mother and father with the intention of killing them, stated the couple's daughter in the FIR. 3 suspects have been arrested, and the search for 2 others continued, heightening tensions in the community.
Thank you to our friends at Atheist Republic for that item. Mm-hmm. But it's a typical example of cross-religion, cross-faith, romantic relationships and disapproval taken to extreme. What do you think, guys?
I think that there's been a huge problem between the Muslims and the Hindus in India for a very long time. Back in 2012, I was doing training for a customer service company, and we had a desk in India, and I used to go over there to train. A lot of the workplaces end up segregated by faith, not because of what the employers are even doing, but because they don't want to work together. So if you get some in there from one faith, the people of the other faith won't even apply. Back then, the Muslims would on a regular basis kill cows and place them across the roads that went in and out of the cities. so that the Hindus couldn't get into the city to get to their job. There were several days that we had to close the call center because of that. This has been a problem there for a long time.
Yeah. It's a variation on the honor killing theme, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's turning the story of Romeo and Juliet on its head, certainly. Where Romeo and Juliet would die. Now they're coming after the parents, and the sad thing is that if these two people loved each other, I think in the West here we believe, regardless of gender, as long as people are of the right age and the right mind, people are going to get married. From an evolutionary point of view, it's the best possibility because it means that we have a wider and wider gene pool. From a social point of view, when you have these barbaric institutions and historical hate based on religion, it shouldn't be a surprise that this is the outcome. What's surprising is that I thought the story would end that they killed the couple, not the couple's parents. But I guess if the couple ran away and you still really want blood, then you're going to go after whoever the next affinal group is.
Yeah.
I should just like to point out that, David, you kind of indicated that here in the West, we're a little more tolerant. Are we? Like, is it just really just a matter of the extreme to which these people are willing to express their outrage at this cross-religion marriage or romance?
I think that's a good point.
Because even here in British Columbia, certainly there are instances where people are outed from their family for marrying into or being romantically involved with someone of a different faith. It's just the degree to which they express that indignation.
I think there are honor killings in the West. They certainly occur in the UK, but I think the difference is that in the UK the law is very clear and enforcement follows, whereas one gets the impression in India that it's a little bit patchy, that in some places perhaps the authorities turn a blind eye or something like that. I'm not sure really.
Well, would it be determined as to whether the authorities were Muslim or Hindu?
Well, maybe, yeah.
Well, I'm going to reveal something here because I married twice, and on both occasions my parents disapproved of my choice of partner, and I think it's none of their business.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Support the couple.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's very forward-looking, and I think everybody here would say the same thing. And Dredd, to your point, yes, there is maybe it's not religious violence, maybe it's economic violence. Sometimes it's religious violence, and I see it with my students all the time when we talk about race and ethnicity, and of course religion comes in. It's like, the pressure to marry someone who looks like you, who has your beliefs, are ingrained even here in the West, right?
Yeah. It's just another example of the division that is caused by religion, and it's all in the name of a God whose evidence is never been demonstrated.
Right.
God or gods, right? In the case of Hindus.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean, what's interesting is that in the UK, and I think it's even more the case in the States, marriage between different ethnicities is very, very common. It's universally accepted now, and it's going to increase, and that I think does drive up the tolerance of this kind of relationship in the West. But
in the U.S. I mean, the U.S. is kind of unique because we're such a large country when we're talking about European countries versus North American countries. And I did drive truck for a year so that I could see all 48. And, no matter where I am in the country, if I'm in an urban area, I see a lot of mixed race couples, things that would indicate it might be a mixed faith couple. I see a lot of that in urban areas and not so much of it in rural areas.
Yeah.
Across the whole country.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. There's a
Right,
true.
that's interesting. That is interesting observation. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a truism I've heard from other sources too. Yeah. So moving on to Iran, where you remember a year ago, in fact, I think it's the anniversary today, there was a death of Mahsa Amini, who was 22, and she died in custody in the hands of the police for not wearing her headscarf correctly. She was wearing it, but not correctly. And so the allegation is that she was beaten to death by the police, and that has led to the largest wave of popular unrest for years in Iran. So what are they doing now? The authorities are coming up with plans to try to enforce their narrow views about how women should behave. So what they have done is they've introduced a law that says women should face up to 10 years in prison if they defy the country's mandatory hijab law, wearing of the scarf. Now, you can imagine that this has not gone down well with some of the more liberal thinkers in Iran, because
Are there any left?
well, there are actually, and I'm pleased to report that they're kicking back. In fact, there's videos of women in the cities in Iran. This is the urban-rural distinction, who are proudly going about with their hair revealed, no scarf, and they're saying, "Piss off, I'll wear what I like," and that's amazing in a place like Iran. So the thing is,
It's incredibly brave.
indeed, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that these prison sentences that in this law, which it's only a draft law at the moment, it hasn't completely passed through, but they are similar to serious offences such as murder and drug trafficking. So it's ridiculous that not wearing a headscarf should be in that category, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Which is interesting because in France, they just passed a law that bans women from wearing hijabs.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, at least while they're in
In
the
state schools.
employment of the government, they
Right.
mustn't do it in schools or
Same.
in government offices.
the same as in Quebec in Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the thing is that this follows renewed patrolling by the, hang on to your hats, morality police. And according to a group of UN Human Rights Council appointed experts, it amounts to an attempt to suppress women and girls into total submission.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
What can you say other than to just reject this kind of thinking as completely oppressive? And in fact, it's not even agreed by the majority of Muslims that it's necessary, as far as I can make out.
Yeah,
It may
indeed.
yeah.
So, leaving the Muslims alone for a minute, unless were you going to say something, David, to add to this?
Just my usual that where does religious violence always affect the most people? And it's usually women, and it's usually children, and usually it's in dastardly ways that have nothing to do with treating people with equality and human value. All these religions that preach love and joy and all these other things are willing to just take more than 50% of the Earth's population and stick them in a cave.
Yeah, it's not even a minority that they're victimizing, is it?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Worship my God of love, or I'll beat you to death.
Right. Exactly. Right.
How crazy is that? Yeah.
Well, it's in accordance with God or Allah's own view that unless you love Him, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who wrote those books? By
Same
the
sort of
way?
thinking. Yeah.
Who wrote those books?
Yeah. So leaving the Muslims aside for the moment and going to the Roman Catholics. A church in Switzerland has identified, this is an inquiry into the Roman Catholic Church in Switzerland, the whole of the Roman Catholic Church in Switzerland, and the inquiry has identified nearly 1,000 cases of sexual abuse since 1950. Many involved children, and 56% of the victims were male, and the vast majority of the accused were also male. Because, of course, if you're a woman, you can't be a leader in the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Mind you, it's not as if nuns were blameless, we now know.
Indeed.
And I bet you that figure is off by 2 orders of magnitude.
Well,
the Roman Catholic Church is really just the modern day continuation of the Roman Empire. They lost political power, so they took religious power and controlled the political power with the religious power.
Exactly.
Who hasn't read that history?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
And they're still doing all the same things the Roman Empire did. They're persecuting, they're enslaving, they're doing it all.
Yes, indeed. And you're absolutely right, Dred. They said that the cases we identified are without a doubt only the tip of the iceberg. So there you go.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Worse than this, because as well as documenting these instances of sexual abuse, the researchers also looked at how the church officials had dealt with the cases that were brought to their attention. And apparently, you're not going to be surprised, many were kept secret, covered up, or trivialized. And the accusation is that clerics accused of committing abuse had been systematically reassigned to other posts by those in position of power, sometimes abroad, to avoid being prosecuted.
This is their normal policy. They've been doing it for decades, possibly even longer than that. And so that's no surprise there.
And the thing we have to worry about is making sure that they don't get this power back, because they will just return to the bad old days, which haven't left. You know, I'm frequently thinking about the fact that if it wasn't for the trifecta of secular democracy and science, we would all be living essentially in the European Dark Ages, fighting some ethnic or religious war that would go on for 100 years. Because we know that that's what happened in the past, and it only stopped happening when people, quote unquote, woke up and decided that's not how they wanted to live anymore.
Yep, we've seen it before. We've got their track record.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so moving on to the United States. We have a National Association of Christian Lawmakers. Did you know?
Yes.
They're set up in...
Are you talking about the Supreme Court?
They are set up to spread model legislation of a conservative nature, including banning abortion, restricting gender-affirming care, and condemning gay marriage. So their goal is to change the social fabric of the country and return America to what, it says, are its Judeo-Christian origins. So, and the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned last year has boosted them, has given them an opportunity to push their vision of biblically informed law.
Right.
So what's interesting here is that a former vice president of this organization. Let me see if I'm getting this mixed up. No. Yeah, a former Arkansas state senator who founded this group as recently as 2019, the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, NACL. He has pushed for the construction of a 10 Commandments monument at the Arkansas State House and has relentlessly opposed gay marriage. And he claims that NACL is a place for lawmakers to debate, construct, and distribute model legislation from a biblical viewpoint. And their members must sign a pledge voicing their opposition to gay marriage, affirming belief in life at conception, and endorsing the idea that Christianity shaped America and made it what it is today. Well, you Americans, what do you think of that?
It's the American Taliban.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, basically, it's the American Taliban. Yeah. I saw, by the way, NaCl, it sounds very familiar.
Sodium chloride.
Yeah, it's table salt. It's a chemical composition for table salt.
Exactly.
I saw a meme recently, a cartoon about two women talking. One said, "I really wish I had a time machine." And the other person says, "Well, just go to either Texas or Florida. It's the 1950s there." Right. And you know, it's tongue in cheek, but it proves a point in humor. That is the reality that is suffering in many parts of this country, where you have huge demographic changes. We all know by 2050 it's going to be a majority minority country where quote unquote white Protestants will no longer be in the minority, and so they are banding together to try in the most sad and horrific ways to enforce rules and laws that, if they want for themselves, be happy, but you know, don't touch my secular democracy.
Please. That's the point. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like you know, it's anachronistic thinking, right? It's like trying to turn back the wheels of time so that the entire country is Amish.
Right.
Well, the NaCl. The NaCl is actually a super PAC, and they're dangerous, period. Mm-hmm. Most of them aren't religious. Most of them are funded by corporations, and they essentially amount to ideologically based think tanks that create legislation that they hand to political officials with a giant check. Like, that's all they do, and they really shouldn't exist at all. On top of this, like, they're obviously a Christian nationalist organization, which is obviously a violation of church and state. Yes. I need my elected officials to step in and fix this. I voted for you. You work for me. Get them out of there.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, you know, it's not new. The Discovery Institute had, and its connections to evangelicals have been writing legislation to try to teach intelligent design in high school science curriculums rather than evolution, or in the same place as evolution. It's been struck down every time. But, you know, this is a playbook that is well worn for them because they can't win. It's like McCarthy trying to investigate Biden. He can't do it by the vote, so he just has to do it by fiat. It's the same thing here. These people wouldn't have the votes for this legislation, but they want to use the power of their legislation to get this through. So it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few spin-off thoughts from what you've just said, because we've had American evangelists over here in Wales trying to convert us. I'll come to that in a minute. But before we leave the US of A, you may or may not know of a firebrand conservative Catholic bishop. I think he's the one that we had on a previous edition of this show, who he was speaking from the pulpit, and he sounded more like an evangelist Protestant than a Catholic. But nevertheless, this is a guy called Joseph Strickland, who oversees the Diocese of Tyler in Texas, and he has stoked controversy in recent years for everything from resistance to COVID-19 vaccines to criticizing the Pope. And of course, the Pope's not very happy with this. So the Pope Francis met on Saturday with Archbishop Robert Prevost, who is the prefect of the Vatican's dicastery for bishops, and Archbishop Christophe Pierre, the papal nuncio or ambassador to the United States. We don't know what they discussed because that's not been made public, but a conservative-leaning website, the Pillar, it's called, has claimed that the meeting touched on whether to ask for the resignation of Strickland, this firebrand guy. And so the item moves on to his reaction. And he said, "I'm unaware of any resignation requests from the Vatican. If I have received any item, no, I have received no information on this from Rome. And if he was to be asked to resign," he said, "as a basic principle, I cannot resign the mandate given to me by Pope Benedict XVI. Of course, that mandate could be rescinded by Pope Francis, but I cannot voluntarily abandon the flock that I have been given charge of as a successor of the apostles."
You know, in this is kind of actually good when you hear stories like this. This is the thing crumbling from the inside,
right?
Yeah.
And the more you hear about this, the better off we are, because let them dismantle themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
I always like vinaigrette on my word salad.
Yeah. Thank you for that, David. Yeah. I'm just bemused by the idea that he's a successor to the apostles. That
Right.
wasn't that
That's actually that's a Catholic belief.
Yeah.
They believe
That's where they wear a ring because they're married to the church.
Yeah, all bishops are successors to the apostles according to their belief.
all priests. Yeah, the
All
succession
priests,
has been passed on hand to mouth from Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like our kings claiming to be the sons of David. If you go to Hereford Cathedral, you will see a family tree of the British monarchy, and it traces all the way back to David. So they are actually, according to them, descended from God. Oh dear. Anyway, staying with the US, because there's quite a lot about
Well,
the US.
you do remember that Jesus was born of a virgin, so Joseph, who was the line of David, didn't father Jesus.
Well,
so the line, whatever that might be, broken at that point. So
and so the genealogies at the beginning of, I think, 2 of the Gospels, which differ from each other, are completely irrelevant.
Yes.
Yeah. Honestly, guys, these are details.
Right. What about Adam and Eve? You know, their prodigy. Are they all inbred? Is that what we're basically saying?
Yeah, there was a certain amount of incest going on.
Yeah.
And if Eve was made from Adam's rib, she's a man.
She's a man, maybe. And
that's why Christians should support transgender.
She's a trans.
She got a Y chromosome. She's a man.
That's right.
Anyway, staying with the American theme at the moment, there's the American Family Association, which is a Mississippi-based conservative group that promotes the biblical ethic of decency in American society. I don't know where they get that from. But a former vice president of the AFA has sued the organization, accusing its leaders of firing him after he reported sexual harassment and financial irregularities by another member of staff. According to these allegations, Robert Chambers, the former VP of Policy and Legislative Affairs of the AFA, he alleged that Ron Cook made repeated sexual advances towards him, including grabbing hold of his face and ear and making comments about masturbation. He said, "I see you're really good with that wrist action. You'd really like me to take you and get a hold of you." Now, Chambers was fired for reporting this, and he claims that he was badly treated because he was the whistleblower, and he was the one who got punished,
Right.
because they unlawfully terminated him and slandered him.
This is hilarious, in my opinion.
Well, there's
Somebody-
nothing really funny about sexual abuse in the workplace.
No, there's not. But what I'm finding amusing is people that far up the chain in an organization that promotes homophobia being accused of homosexual sexual harassment is hilarious.
Yeah.
It is horrible that this gentleman was sexually harassed. It is horrible that he was fired because he was sexually harassed.
Right.
But that fact is hilarious.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I take your point. Yeah.
we have seen time and time again that those who campaign against gay equality are often, repressed gay people themselves.
It's actually just a truism of the human psyche.
Yeah.
Pedophiles are more likely to be vocally outspoken anti-pedophile than non-pedophiles.
Right.
Racists are more like, that's just part. That's how we hide we hide who we really are from the people if we know that we'll be condemned for who we really are.
Yeah.
It's just part of who we are.
Yeah,
Anyway.
America has a long tradition politically as well. I mean, look at in this next election cycle, you have Tim Scott, who there have been rumors for a very long time that he's gay. He's a 50-year-old guy, never married. You've got Lindsey Graham. Again, these are people who are legislating anti-trans laws, anti-gay laws, who themselves are probably closeted.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the famous evangelical pastor who was very homophobic, and then he was caught in flagranti with some boy somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All of them.
But, it happens regularly.
Right.
I mean, we've made this same point repeatedly on this very news review.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Guy, the Americans are coming over here.
I'm sorry.
There's,
No, we've got enough problems here anyway to keep us going.
yeah, I know. We thought we'd sent them all off on the Pilgrim Fathers, didn't we? Anyway, they're coming back. They're coming back because there was some sad news in Bridgend in South Wales, not far from Cardiff in South Wales, when in the early 2010s, there was some suicides. There was a whole succession of young people who killed themselves. And the community was a bit distraught about this, and they invited help. And one of the groups that offered to help them was Louisiana-based First West Baptist Church. So they came over as part of a cultural exchange for almost 10 years. And they established that they could provide entertainment in the form of concerts and sports events. And they also led classes in history, maths, and science. And this is in the churches in Bridgend, and one of the biology teachers said she felt very uneasy when her class was told that creationism was true and Darwin and science has been a lie. Now, one student, as a result of some assembly that they had with, lots of lovely music, really good rocky music, and they were discouraging gay and lesbian behavior as anti-biblical. And one student claimed that they were worried that the other members of their class who might be gay and lesbian themselves were no longer likely to be accepted by their peers who had been converted by these evangelists. Mm. Whereas up until then, of course, these people with different sexual interests were treated with tolerance. Mm-hmm. But what happened is one of the gay persons complained, and the next day they had an assembly, and the head of the school announced that these evangelicals were not representative of the Welsh community and they would not be coming again. And then we had the COVID pandemic and everybody was locked down. But believe it or not, the First West Baptists have said they're open to return to South Wales in 2024. Ooh, goody. But one of the members of the Senedd, which is the Welsh government, Bridgend's member named Sarah Murphy, is shocked that the partnership has been going on for so long, and it raises serious questions. A Welsh government spokesperson said, young people have a right to be heard and feel respected at school. They should not be made to feel uncomfortable. And the National Secular Society campaigns officer has said, American evangelicals have exploited a local tragedy in South Wales to evangelize school children and expose them to religious homophobia and scientific misinformation. Mm-hmm. We must ensure this cannot happen again. And there's a very good video that I recommend you to watch. I've linked it underneath the Global Atheist News episode that was broadcast yesterday. And it's
I was just going to say, this sounds like a 10-year Stanford prison experiment.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not welcome, you evangelicals. Sorry, go away.
I personally wish the Welsh would let them back and then just arrest them when the plane landed, and then none of us have to deal with them anymore. Let them leave the country where they can use separation of church and state as a protection, and then arrest them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was visited by a couple of young Mormons the other day, and I invited them in. I relieved them of a copy of their Book of Mormon, and gave them a good talking to, and then I sent them on their way.
Good. Waste their time.
Yes, it's the oddest thing to see a couple of young boys coming to the door calling themselves elders.
Right. Yeah, these were girls, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
But
do they call themselves elders?
I didn't ask them, actually.
No, elder in the Mormon church, elder is a rank in the priesthood, and only men can hold the priesthood because patriarchy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway,
I should have asked them whether they're priestesses or something.
Right.
Oh. Anyway, lightening the mood now for the last few minutes. You'll be pleased to hear that Sylvester Stallone was received at the Vatican by Pope Francis.
Yeah.
Take a look at this.
This is my wife,
Good morning.
my daughters, Dre, and my brother Frank.
Good morning, sister.
And my brother Frank. Well, thank you very much taking time of your busy days. We appreciate this very much. Thank you. I'm honored too.
Noi siamo cresciuti con i vostri figli. We grew up with your sons.
Ready? Relax. Oh, that's so, yeah, ready.
Favorite.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Just love that the Pope boxing with.
It was nice to hear Sly actually enunciate a word for a change, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just Adrian.
Right? Why can't he speak that clearly in his movies?
Yeah, good point. Anyway, I'm going to play you something now, which, as a parent of 2 girls at the moment, I would save the video of this in order to show it to their first boyfriend, because it's so embarrassing. Take a look at this.
Can't deny that I love Jesus Christ. He died for sins. Can't deny that I love Jesus Christ. He died for sins. I'm a Christian woman. Christian woman.
Evangelical mothers, please teach your daughters how to use makeup.
Yeah.
Please. It's not even on the right parts of her face.
That's Tammy Faye Jr. right there.
I thought it
was that a TikTok, John?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm not sure.
She's from America's Got No Talent.
Oh my goodness.
On that note, on that Christian note, I'm going to call this show to an end. Thank you very much for taking part in it.
Thank you.
See you again,
Bye,
guys.
then.
Thanks for having me.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry moon drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?